Welcome everyone. I'm Adnan Amjad, Deloitte US Cyber Leader. During our first ever Deloitte Cyber House event in San Francisco during RSA Week, we met with a lot of our clients to discuss the future of cyber. We've compiled a few highlights from these discussions across critical cyber topics such as agentic AI, the path to secure modernization, what's next in identity, and most importantly, building resilience. I hope you find these topics as fascinating and insightful as I did, and encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions. Enjoy.
In fact, one of the quotes I say a lot is one of the CISOs I've spoken to in the past. He asked me, Anand, do you know why you have security guardrails in place in an organization? I said, why? He said, well, no, he asked me, do you know why cars have brakes? I said, why? He said, well, cars have brakes so that you can drive faster, right? So when you think about things like AI defense guardrails, as an employee of an organization, if I know that my access to Gen AI is protected with guardrails, I can do my job faster without thinking twice about, okay, should I really be doing this? Is there a policy I'm violating, right? Same way with cloud applications. So if you ask most employees in large organizations, they want to do better by their company. They want to build better applications for their customers, right? The challenge is AI security is a lot of the ways in which a model can be compromised are very difficult to understand, even for a technologist, right? So if every time I'm working on a model, I have to think about what are the ways in which it might impact my organization, it slows down my development lifecycle, right? So that's where having a product like this actually enables faster velocity in these organizations, right? So what we hear constantly from VPs of AI, VPs of engineering, from VPs of InfoSec, is that you're taking some of this weight off of my shoulders. I don't know what I can do with it. I don't know if it's going to give me accurate responses. But the number two set of concerns is all around privacy and safety and security. So if you're able to solve for that, that's one of the things G2 spoke about at the keynote yesterday, that AI safety and security is going to be the biggest accelerator for Gen AI adoption in the enterprise, right? Which is what we're hearing from customers as well. Early days, a lot of exciting work.
I've read a lot of the things that you've written about. One of the themes that comes up a lot is deep visibility. Can you kind of talk about how that works in practice?
So, first of all, the basic principle is that you can't secure what you don't know about, right? And it's the basic concept, right? If we talk about AI, for example, right. We don't even know how attacks in AI looks like, but we do know that if someone is using AI, I want to know about the security team, right? I don't want to be the last one that knows about it. I prefer to know about it in advance. But just let's understand the current position of security teams. They go to RSA, okay? It's just 1 week. They come back, everything changed, right? New applications running, architecture changed, and they didn't know they were in RSA, right? So visibility is about actually knowing what is actually running right now, without the need to depend on a developer that comes to me and shows me a slide deck, okay? Even if they remember to come to me and show me the slide deck, who says the slide deck is actually true, right? And even if it's true, maybe it changed, So we can't continue to rely on classic approaches where everything is static, so deep visibility means I want to know about everything I have across my environment in a way that is dynamic, that actually shows me the real attack surface and not just the slide didn't have this database, so I didn't know about it, right? So that doesn't matter. So that's it's all about, again, if I think about attack surface, I need to know exactly what's exposed. I need to know exactly what's running.
Dr. Norton, can you talk a little bit about what leading practices have you seen organizations adopt, and what are recommendations or advices that you would give to organizations?
Yeah, so it's still early days, right? So I'll say that.
Yeah.
There's a lot more hype about AI than there's actual production AI solutions, right? So what we see is that a lot of clients are piloting, testing, prototyping, et cetera, but then they get stuck. and they get stuck before they can move to production for two reasons. We know this from our own research and other research that we've seen. First one is concerns with security. Second one is concerns with data, right? Data privacy. So the good news is these are areas and domains we've known, right, for a long, long time. And so my recommendation is don't create a whole new AI security program, but basically enhance the security program you have to address the nuances associated with AI, right? So if you already have a software development lifecycle and you already have, constants in place to how to secure that, you don't throw that out, but you're going to have to add to it, right? You're going to have to add more from a data validation perspective, more from a data testing standpoint. You're going to have to add, model, specific security techniques and so forth. But enhance what you have. Don't create a new thing. Don't do it separately, because when you create new programs, unfortunately, that comes with a lot of overhead. So I would really tell people to focus on enhancing what they have today, modernizing it for AI, and trying to make it as streamlined and automated as possible, right? Because again, if we're asking people to do things, they have to go manually do it or otherwise do it voluntarily. Like, those are not optimal scenarios, right? So I think that would be the advice and a good place for most companies to start. The clients that are farther down the path, right, they're probably getting into some fairly nuanced use cases around what they're trying to do. I will say that with all the hype around agentic's real in the sense that it's going to be very impactful to every business. There's not a lot of real agentic happening. A lot of it's happening in places like ServiceNow, right? I wouldn't say it's a walled garden, but it's a fenced garden, right? Yeah. You can be in there and you're not worried about the deer coming and eating all the plants, right? Because it's a controlled environment to some degree, and you wouldn't be in ServiceNow if you weren't supposed to be in ServiceNow, et cetera. So there's some security around that. And so a lot of companies are starting there. But once you cross boundaries, once you start jumping from ServiceNow to other systems and you're going for a true agentic, the complexity goes up incredibly, right? Yeah. And so the advice there is to focus on an agent first, build the agent, do it right, understand it, then worry about agentic. Right? If you go straight for agentic, you're biting off complexity in that model you probably are not ready to consume. So in fact, ServiceNow, Google, and Deloitte have announced a new effort where the three of us are sponsoring in agent-to-agent communication standards, right? To help sort of simplify that process. But again, do the fundamentals well first before you try and swing for home runs.
Yeah. To Rich, we talked about both sides of the coin, right? So the side of innovating and doing more from an AI perspective. Flip side of that coin, as a CISO, when you think about the changing landscapes, what are some AI-driven threats that either you've seen or that we need to be prepared for?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in two ways. One, a scenario at the end and the beginning. I'm a big fan of organizations being able to answer questions, right? Karen made a comment about a dedicated team, not a dedicated team. Oftentimes that's cultural, depending how the organization works. But irregardless, today, I would suggest most don't, but should be able to answer these questions about AI. Do I have a complete inventory of all AI agents operating in my environment, to include third party? Do I have a process in place today to validate and evaluate the agent before it goes live into my environment? And then do I understand the identity and access management and authorization of those agents to be able to communicate with other agents in my environment? Fourth, how am I monitoring the health of those agents to understand, are they introducing unknown or ununderstandable or new risks into the environment? And then my biggest concern is okay, so what happens when you're done with your agent? Are we back to the cloud world where we have all these tenants that are dormant out there, but the difference now is these dormant agents can be weaponized very easily and take action on the evolution of it. So, I think answer all those questions, and you might say you have a AI security program. How you construct that obviously depends on a lot of different things. But the other interesting thing about AI and how much everyone is embracing it, if I put my other hat on, and let's just say, hypothetically, I don't want to take a particular country, but let's say you're a country who, doesn't have a large GDP, and you have to make money, through other fashions to support your country. So you might decide to look and say, hey, look, everybody is starting to use travel agent AI. Why do you need to use a travel agency anymore, right? You're just out there looking for all the best prices of this. You can run AI, gather up that information, book the flights. As a matter of fact, you can automate the payment and everything else. Well, I can also introduce fake information into that ecosystem, and suddenly you're paying for things that actually aren't real, but according to AI is real, because AI is using the internet and other things to get their information. So, we also need to think about that as a business application as we go to embrace this, and think about it from a bad actor standpoint, is how could they potentially take what would be a common sense process that shows enablement and empowerment, but understanding how AI works, you can introduce things that can cause it to obviously capture false information and come to false conclusions.
Yeah, manipulate, right, et cetera, right? I mean, it's possible to distort the world in a way that has not been really accessible previously.
A non-existent truth becomes the truth now.
Yeah,
right? Because
exactly.
I read it on the internet.
Yeah,
Must be true.
I mean, Dr. Norton said so.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to start with the idea of AI adoption. Deloitte's recent State of Gen AI survey found that 78% of organizations plan to increase their spending on AI in the next year. And so, Blake, starting with you, would love to ask you the question of, are you seeing us reach a tipping point where organizations are moving out of pilot phases and into production and scale when it comes to AI?
Yeah. The short answer is absolutely. And I think the way I describe it and hear our clients talk about this is everyone, went through the season of sort of very exploratory phase. So everyone was exploring the art of the possible in so many different ways. And now everyone seems to be shifting into how do we narrow some of that focus, right? And go from just explore everything to what are the high value ROI, use cases that we're able to really focus on, and really take a couple of those and really get all the way through and get them live and in production. So in general, I see that shift happening. I think there's a couple substantial technology shifts that have happened over the past 12 months that are enabling that in a more material way as well. So we saw a lot of, actually every week, it's hard to not, wake up and sort of see what are the new AI things I got to figure out and learn and get brought up to speed with. And problems that, we thought we had 6 months ago now all of a sudden have been solved. But you've seen a lot. And if I simplify it down to some of the key things that you've seen, we've effectively democratized the simplicity of getting AI connected to our enterprise apps and data and enabling them to start doing things, right? And that simplifies the way that we can now bring products to the market and start to get things from concept phases and into, okay, this can actually be done and is real and achievable. So in general, I think that shift has been something that for sure has happened, and we're I think your research is showing that. We're seeing that happen in practice. Now, what's exciting or interesting is it is introducing new challenges that go with it.
Right.
And the way I think about this is, if you think like 12 months ago, when everyone talked about AI risk and that was sort of a top of mind, most people talked about the models, right? We were thinking about hallucinations and those types of concerns about what's the bias in the model, hallucination risk, quality, these types of things. And we've sort of moved past that. I mean, those are still real material problems we have to solve and worry about, but it's not as top of mind as now AI with these new updates, right? It's very easy to connect to your enterprise systems and data. And that has sort of shifted to this new problem of, well, AI needs data and data needs governance. And we heard that echo on the panel before us about the two biggest things that are blocking companies going live with these is you've got to solve security of it and you've got to solve data governance of it. And that is kind of changing the landscape of
the more important thing that people have to tackle to get these things live.
You mentioned that hunting necessarily, the experience of hunting isn't necessarily going to go away immediately. Maybe it will down the line, but take us out 3 to 5 years, and what are security operations practitioners doing?
So if I look at SecOps sort of stack from not just the SOC more narrowly, but from detection processes, maybe leave the incident response be, because ultimately if something really blows up, if the top shelf attacker shows up, you humans will be doing the work. Like I don't see that being transformed all that much. But in the other parts of detection, I do see a lot of AI brain powers being applied to alert triage. So I think that large bank leader, large financial org leader may have a point on many of the tasks dealing with clearing the alerts, contextualizing them, understanding them, and then deciding what to do. The actual doing TBD, it may still involve humans. But that part is where many of the startups are investing. They're trying to apply superior brain powers and superior context knowledge of various LLMs to understand this. And the second bucket is, of course, turning vague intelligence into robust rules. I think many people have a dream of looking up some PDF online that says APT42 can do X to your network and that would cause Y. And they would give this report to an LLM and a beautiful SIM-ready detection rule would come out, and you can drop it into your SIM right away and it would detect that threat and would not produce false positive. If you tell me this story 2 years ago, I would say that it's a really good dream, but reality would not make it happen. Mm-hmm. Today, I pause before I give an answer because I've seen enough people that have converted enough loose, vague signals, threat intelligence, and intelligence I'm being generous when I mean intelligence, some kind of stuff about threats into pretty robust detections with minimal, not zero, human interaction. And maybe they added a sequence of a part of a prompt to say, don't LLM convert this intelligence into detection, make sure to account for X and Y. And the rule is there and gets produced. Like we produce rules through a similar process. These rules work. Do they always work in every company? No. Does it mean that you can simply shovel Intel into a big funnel and beautiful production-ready rules come out? No. But the role for humans shrinks in that process. And while a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, I'd be like, no, you would need humans. Today, I pause and I think, over here, if your environment is peculiar, you do need humans to be involved. And over here, yes. But nothing here is inherently human. Mm-hmm. And that's a shift of last couple of years ago. So if somebody shows up from 2030 and says, yeah, we made this work in full auto mode for most detections, I believe them.
If there's a small problem, there's a tool for that, right? And what we worry about, and one of the things we've been telling our clients is, because I noticed we haven't talked about Gen AI yet, so something must be amiss because we need to talk about AI. But what we're telling our clients is, if you want to build the enterprise of the future, not for cyber, but if you want to build your enterprise for the future, where you have digital coworkers sitting next to humans, right? When you're interacting a lot more with machines than you have. It could be in your customer function, it could be in your factories, it could be in your mid-office banking activities. You have to get ready for that. And cyber in particular is so stovepiped, it is going to be incredibly hard for our clients, organizations who are pumping millions and billions of dollars into AI, to make sure cyber is ready for that, right? And I think what's going to be even more critical is the resilience around the future enterprise that we're building. So would love to get your thoughts in terms of how do you see resilience, because I agree with your point on all the stovepipe multiple tools, right? But how do you see resilience evolving in the age of AI, right? What is your best case scenario? What is stuff that keeps you up at night? I mean, I would love to get your thoughts on that spectrum.
You have painted a great picture, Adnan. This is how the world is going to be. A lot of people are confused about AI. Future of AI is human work completely done by AI, not AI assisting human. AI assisting human is a misnomer. If AI has to really work, then the human work has to be done by AI. So you could have AI co-worker who is independently, autonomously doing the work. And so think about that world where you have you and an AI co-worker. And if you look at like what is AI doing is, if you look at our world, there are two parts of our world, known world and unknown world. Unknown world is where the things are not known and we are connecting the dot. Known one is all your knowledge. And AI is taking all the world's knowledge, everything that has ever been written or thought about, and it can correlate things and give you that knowledge in a succinct answer. But it can't connect the dot. So humans will be connecting the dot. AI will be bringing you the knowledge. You can ask any topic, any question, and it can give you that information. So in a world where human is doing intuition work and AI is doing the knowledge work, you have to ensure that the AI is secure, because if the knowledge is wrong and hacked, then intuition will be totally farce. So in that world, I do not believe this moat and wall is going to work. My vision of the cyber future is truly inside-out security, is truly autonomous, disconnected, loosely coupled system, but every entity in the loosely coupled system is self-secure. Zero trust goes in that direction, because think about this autonomous AI agent that is your knowledge worker. If it is secure and it can only talk to the fully authenticated, trusted entity, then you have really solved the cybersecurity problem. Then all these autonomous things are independently secure, and then your orchestration of these autonomous agent is going to be secure by definition. So I personally believe that, and I 100% agree with you, there's a stovepipe and big moats, and these things are not going to work. We need to think, instead of thinking about outside insecurity, the new world is going to be inside out security. Everything will assume that everything else is compromised.
Right.
And how do I talk to, in a trusted way, to a trusted, authenticated entity? And that's going to be the future of AI. And I personally believe that for AI to succeed, that future of cyber has to happen. Otherwise, cyber could kiboshe the AI future.
Agreed.
Some of our final questions here. You know, everyone's talking about AI. You really talked about some of the innovations you're already driving, right? Maybe think 12, 24 months ahead. What are some of the new AI innovations that we should, get excited about and expect to see? And maybe what's hype that isn't quite ready yet?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, there probably does need to be the light in all these sessions when AI comes up, or a timer to see, because it is obviously top of everybody's mind. And I think certainly top of a lot of the conversations here at RSA. In the identity space in particular, right, I think we are really leaning into the idea of AI agents are game changers, right? Whether that's an agentic workforce or agentic agents or large language models. But what we've seen at scale with many of our customers is all of a sudden, as that starts getting deployed, those questions come from compliance, from security about, hold on, should these people really have access to this data? What controls do you have in place? How are you sure that, can you show me the effective access if I have a agentic workforce doing some things? It's like, well, those are really me doing it effectively, and I can use those agents to perform a task. So I'm going to bubble that up. Auditors are starting to care about that. Security teams are there. So I think we've seen this kind of really explosion of enthusiasm around using AI to make businesses more efficient, but then many programs coming to this screeching halt where they realize, man, I just can't control this. I've got to rethink how this works. So for us, we're really thinking, how do we get in front of that problem? How do we effectively show the effective access that someone has? If you are using AI agents, how do you put controls in place around the data and applications so you can have now conditional access perhaps to people, and the agents that gives Sarah a different view than it does Bob that's appropriate to their role, to really help the business use those agents to get the value that they were hoping to do in the beginning, and really control that from the beginning, as opposed to having to come in 2 years from now and retrofit all those controls in place. So I think more out-of-the-box solutions that help understand the landscape of agents is definitely on the horizon for the next few years, and then more controls in place around
RAG models and large action models to be able to give those agents the right access at the right time, but not too much access is really top of mind.
Chad.
I mean, you said, is it hype? And, what I think there's broad consensus, and we've been doing this long enough where we've seen buzzwords come and go, right? We had blockchain, we had cloud, which cloud wasn't really hype, but it became real. They've been different things, and they've have different successes, and they've transformed things differently. I think there's broad consensus that AI is going to fundamentally transform information technology, right? It's cyber services, it's technology. It is going to happen. It's an inevitability. Yes, there will be hype cycles, and yes, there will be different things that people will try, as with any new technology, but then it'll streamline to something else, which it's hard to predict at this point exactly what it will be. But I think we can say for certain, the identity world of today is not going to be the identity world in 1 year, and it's certainly not going to be the identity world in 2 to 5 years, right? As a service provider, a large part of what we do is onboard applications, right? A lot of work in configuring, getting requirements, testing those connectors, deploying them, and making sure they work. Bots are going to be doing that. I can say that with extreme certainty, right? Year, maybe 2 years, there will be AI agents that will be deploying those and managing those. There's no need for a human. It's a very deterministic thing to do. Yes, we might have some change management around it that humans would have to do, but that's going to fundamentally change.
Can't have a conversation about cyber without AI, so we got to throw the AI buzzword out there.
Yeah.
So where do you see AI fitting into the modern SOC? Is it really just capability that can facilitate analysts as they're triaging and investigating alerts through the SIM? Is it more than that? So where does AI fit into the modern SOC, and what's Powell's approach for that as well?
All the above, but no, just playing. So,
Yeah, we are the AI.
So right now, and we just released this with 3.0, we have capabilities that we're enabling more from an AI perspective, where it's going to give you recommendations. It sees trends on different type of playbooks you run. So let's say Deloitte creates 10, 20 playbooks for a customer. As it sees trends, and it'll say, well, you know what? That Deloitte playbook that you created, that's the best for this situation for an analyst. And it's going to be able to call that out to the analyst. There are co-pilots that we have aligned with XIM as well. So even if it sees misconfiguration or it's seeing something that's not right, it's starting to bubble those things up now. I can now talk to the co-pilot and say, show me top 10 threat actors that we've seen. It's going to bubble that up from a language perspective. And even from a perspective, I can bring my own ML under the covers for XIM. So now if I do data classification a certain way that my organization only does it, I could align that under the covers with the ML functionality of XIM. So I've created an ultimate easy button of flexibility within XIM, right? So I think it is very important the way we see our company as an AI first company. And I still think it's the future and where we're headed.
Yeah, I think that to really have a next generation SOC, AI is going to be 100% within its DNA, right? Across every facet that Anthony has described here. I think a big key is enablement, right? Our practitioners are enabled by having AI make smart recommendations, whether it's a co-pilot, triaging alerts, the proliferation of alerts, like I mentioned, and basically helping across every single facet in that security workflow. So I think that's so important. That's one of the chief things I think I look for, in the next generation SOC platform, is that ability to be able to elevate my SOC practitioners and tell them, hey, you don't have to do some of this minutia that you were used to doing before. This is something that you can now leverage. AI is something that you can now leverage going forward in a much more efficient and sophisticated way.
And then there are those that are looking at this or speaking to this, and we're going to hear a lot from some of our friends later on today, Dr. Mosca and all those that have been doing this for over 20 years. What if tomorrow is the day? What if the week after next is the day? And he's not yelling at the windmill. He's not saying that this is doom and gloom and the sky is falling, but he's saying, I don't know if you've all caught the news, but there's things that have affected us right under our feet. So what if that were the case, that these new methods with this type of quantum, compute power, were able to not take RSA or ECC out in 5 minutes, but What if it took 5 days or 5 months? I'd still take that if I was a nation state or a bad actor. So, sorry, back to what I was basically saying. I think that the element of this is lost on a lot of people who just are still arms crossed, quite skeptical, but I would say that skepticism is slowly dissipating to, at least we agree we've got to get ready for this. And the question is, how much effort do we have, and how much resources do we have to start now so that we are ready for this? We talked about, when is quantum day? I don't know. Do you have a crystal ball? I don't. So what is quantum day? Is it when everybody now knows that there's a CRQC, or is it that we've had a few hacks, we've had a few, things like this happen? So all said and done, I don't think you can afford to sit around anymore. So whether it's a semblance of a discovery starting off or a full MRI of your organization, you got to do something.
I think I would just add that from our business perspective as on the product side, we always say that one of our biggest competitors is the status quo for doing cryptography, and for your planning, one of your biggest risks is the status quo. So as a motivator for like a call to action, as an example, for a lot of folks, somewhere in your organization is some poor soul who has been tasked with rooting out SHA-1 and replacing it with SHA-2 and more secure hash functions. If that hasn't bubbled up to your perspective yet, like, go find that person and talk to them, and then multiply that effort by 10, by 100, by 1,000 to get a feel for the magnitude of this effort that we're staring down. Because I think that's going to give you a feel for it. Or alternatively, instead of talking to the person who's fixed it all, go and see how many years you've signed off on exceptions to policy for keeping SHA-1 in your infrastructure.
How would you recommend companies integrate agentic AI, big topic these days, into their minimal viable planning, viable company planning, and what potential vulnerabilities should they consider?
So I think as it relates to agentic AI, so we have, one of our first agents started as like a Gen AI agent, and it's kind of as agentic is then becoming more popular. As we think about the agents that we're building and we think are important to kind of focus on for agentic AI, I think there's like 3 categories that we believe are important from a minimum viability and a cyber resilience perspective. The first actually has very little to do with recovery, which is there are things that operationally organizations can do that are proactive and would help them recover faster, but have really little to do with the actual recovery. Like, for example, if a set of system patches is out of date or not the right one, or there were other policies that hadn't been applied to a fleet or part of an estate, or if there's been drift in a set of systems, these are all things that are going to cause issues upon recovery. There are also things that smart agents can be like, hang on a second, something, you're running out of either policy here, or this is going to cause problems.
Right.
And proactively find those sorts of things. So I think that's a category where we believe a lot of kind of potential and focus should be applied. Another one I think is around then just kind of the mechanics of recovery, especially around some of this idea of like clean point validation is, what are you doing to scan for threats and anomalies and correlate across systems? So I think there's some power in agentic AI there. And then probably the last is just there's a lot of processes in the recovery space that are still manual. And so being able to use smart agents to just go and, just code my run, like figure out what my run book should be, code those things for me and help me automate some of those processes.
I think this is a good segue to the question I have. If you had a crystal ball and you were to kind of predict what you would see as the emerging technologies over the next 3 to 5 years that would change the whole SIAM paradigm or a landscape, what would that be?
Yeah, and I would say in addition to the current topics of, experience and fraud, there's 4 different things that we're seeing, I would say, disruptions or disruptors that are in play in the market right now. We've talked about a couple of them. Agentic identity or agentic AI is absolutely one of those. Deep fakes absolutely another one of those, both strongly influencing what we're doing in the industry. Couple of others, quantum safe computing is a huge issue. I think folks are starting to see the horizon where quantum will become real, and making sure that we are starting to implement quantum safe crypto in our systems and how we're protecting data. It's another big area that we see. The final one is what I'll call wallet-based trust. And so if you think about how consumers today are interacting digitally with the world, particularly with things like payments, tap and go, boarding airplanes, driving your car, getting access to concerts, all kinds of things are happening via your wallet on your smartphone, and these credentials that exist in your wallet that are verifiable to ensure that maybe you're old enough to buy a beverage, you of a certain age, or you have a certain certification, or you have a training to operate machinery. The use cases are endless in terms of how these credentials sitting in wallets that need to be verified are going to be utilized. And I would say, importantly, the consumer expectation of the experience has reached a tipping point where it's almost becoming the de facto way that a consumer would like to interact with the world at this point. It's kind of like when we moved from cash to credit cards in the checkout lines, right? It's now very frustrating to see somebody pay with cash rather than just tapping and going. In a similar way, I expect the same thing to happen with identity and wallets and credentials, where this experience of username, password, or passwordless, that's going to change. And the thing you're going to log into is your wallet. It is going to present yourself out to the world and make it very, very seamless for you. And so that's the other big area we see as a major disruptor in the industry. It's going to be shaping the future experiences we see.